Hi, Carly.
Oh, hey, Uncle Kevin.
What are you doing?
Building a fort to protect myself.
From what?
Coronavirus. Mom says it can get inside you and make you sick.
Well, it can, but you want me to tell you the best ways to fight a supervillain like the coronavirus?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go. Okay, well, first of all, you have to know your enemy in order to defeat him, right? You'll have to know his strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
So what is the coronavirus, and what are his supervillain powers?
Being invisible?
Good guess, Carly. So small, in fact, that you need a special microscope just to see him.
What does he look like?
Well, he's round and has little antennas that stick out of him, kind of like the sticky burrs that get caught in Max's fur, except he attaches himself to people. Coronavirus travels into your body through your nose, mouth, and eyes, and then makes lots of copies of himself while he's in there, making a whole coronavirus army, which could make you sick.
My friend Lucy had coronavirus inside of her, and she didn't feel sick.
Well, some people just get a little sick, like children, or not sick at all. But it can make older people like Grandma and Grandpa really sick. And even if we don't get sick, we can still carry around the coronavirus, which can jump from us to other people or things.
What things?
Well, if someone sneezes or coughs, the virus travels through the air in droplets that can stick to things, like door handles. If you touch the door handle and then put your hand near your mouth, nose, or eyes, the virus can get inside you.
How can we stop it?
Well, first of all, by not being with large groups of people. With less people around us for the virus to jump to, he eventually goes away.
Is that why Lucy couldn't have a big birthday party last week?
Exactly. That's also why school was closed.
So how can I protect myself, Uncle Kevin? I don't want the coronavirus to jump to me.
Secret weapon number 1. Wash your hands.
Wash my hands? That doesn't sound like a secret weapon, Uncle Kevin.
It is. The coronavirus sticks to your hands, but when you wash them really well with soap and water, it unsticks the virus. But you have to do it for at least 20 seconds, which is the same amount of time it takes to sing the ABC song.
So what else?
When you sneeze or cough, do it into your elbow, like this. Also, if you aren't feeling well, stay at home and don't play with or hug anyone who feels sick. And lastly, what superhero doesn't wear a mask?
Thanks, Uncle Kevin.
You have to wear it properly, though, okay? It has to cover your nose and your mouth, and you wear it whenever you leave the house.
Right.
Shall we finish building this fort, then?
Sure, but could you wash your hands first, Uncle Kevin?
Absolutely, Carly.
Did you have a good night? Good evening, Bermuda. During today's briefing, we will have an update from the Minister of Health on COVID-19, the latest test results, and also other matters from the Ministry of Health. And the Minister of National Security, Minister Wayne Keynes, is here to answer any questions which may come from the media. Earlier today, a release went out from my office outlining the changes that have been made for Phase 3B. As signaled in Tuesday's press conference, the release confirmed that additional personal services would be permitted starting today. Our continued testing regime and the low numbers of positive results have provided the opportunity to implement a Phase 3B and reintroduce some personal services. Facial grooming of beards and eyebrows, as well as waxing and massages, can now be provided. Operators are obliged to follow public health guidelines which state the frequency of coronavirus testing that should be followed for the providers of these high-risk services. The close contact involved in these services requires greater mitigation of the risk of transmission, and service providers must act responsibly and customers must be vigilant for their own safety. The amended regulations were signed by the governor earlier today and are now published online. Other changes include permitting additional capacity for charter vessels based on the size of the boat and the adherence to physical distancing rules. Spas are now permitted to open, and the resumption of full personal services also includes therapeutic massage and tattooing. The high level of compliance we have seen from our community is critical to the progress we are making in reopening Bermuda. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of testing for those who want to continue to offer these services, and the continued use of masks and all of the physical distancing protocols which are effectively keeping us safe. Later this evening, the Minister of Public Works, Colonel Birch, will issue guidelines reminding the public about using public parks and nature reserves while maintaining physical distancing. As we move about this summer enjoying Bermuda's beaches and parks, we must do so with care. We are still in the midst of a pandemic, which we have navigated well so far, but we must always remember that the public health and physical distancing guidelines that are in place are there to reduce the risk of the spread of the coronavirus. And if we do not all collectively do our part, we will go backwards. It is a good thing to be in Phase 3B. As you can see, I look a little bit different than I've looked for the past 3 months, and I'm grateful for the work that the Minister of Health has been doing in getting the pop-up testing working around the island, so many of our service providers were able to be tested over the past week. Now, the Minister of Health will give us the latest update from her ministry. Minister.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, there were 123 test results received by the Ministry of Health, and none were positive for COVID-19. Bermuda continues to have 144 total confirmed positive cases, and their status is as follows. There are 7 active cases, of which all are under active public health monitoring, and none are hospitalized or in critical care. A total of 128 have now fully recovered, and the total deceased number remains at 9. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 61, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 18 to 101 years. Overall, 56% of all cases are black, 41% are white, and 3% are other or unknown. The source of all local cases is as follows. 41 are imported, 85 are local transmission with known contact, 12 are local transmission with an unknown contact, and 6 are under investigation. Bermuda's country status remains local transmission cluster of cases. The 7-day average of our real-time reproduction number is below 1. Our reopening scorecard was updated today, and we are extremely pleased with the Health IQ app, which now has over 7,700 users, which is excellent progress. Please register so that we can get to the 10,000 mark, which will allow us to get a green light at on the indicators that I've spoken about previously. If you've already signed up, please encourage your friends and your contacts to also join. On the downside, I have to highlight that mask wearing and physical distancing have deteriorated. The Bermuda Health Council is working with Health IQ to monitor reports, and we can see that while overall mask wearing has increased, over the past week it has definitely deteriorated. We need to get better and more consistent about this. With respect to physical distancing, the reports show that our collective behavior is deteriorating, and we are not even hitting 75% compliance, which is too low to get us to the green light on the indicator. Physical distancing is extremely important. If you are not wearing a mask, stay 6 feet at least away from people. If you have to be closer than 6 feet, wear a mask and try to stay at least 3 feet away from people. We can also see from Health IQ that a higher number of persons are reporting potential symptoms. I'm very encouraged that people are availing themselves of our testing capacity through our pop-ups, the drive-thrus, and the mobile testing. This gives us assurance that we don't have persons unknowingly spreading COVID within our community. As we enter the new phases of reopening during COVID-19 pandemic, many of our private healthcare colleagues, including GPs, dentists, hygienists, dental assistants, and nurses, will no longer be available to volunteer alongside the Department of Health as they have been over the past several months. Without them volunteering their time and services, the Department of Health would not have been able to cover the ground which we did, and in such a short space of time. For this, we are eternally grateful. Therefore, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge them here today for their willingness to serve our community without compensation. This was a huge task, and their contribution was very much appreciated. I would like to call them out in the following order, and I'm doing so alphabetically. Dr. Chris Arlington, Dr. Kaiwan Brown, Dr. Gordon Campbell, Dr. Helen Christopher, Dr. Richard Fulton, Dr. David Galloway, Dr. Stanley James, Dr. Shana Kelly, Ms. Catherine Kemp, Dr. Stephen Kenny, Dr. Ben Lau, Dr. Christine McFeely, Dr. Laura Murphy, Dr. Emne Asaram, Dr. Hamish Reed, Dr. Constance Richards, Dr. Fiona Ross, Dr. Joanna Sherritt Wire, Dr. Danielle Simons, Dr. Nicola Tessera, Dr. Wilbert Warner, and Dr. Len Wedlich. I would like us all to raise a banner of gratitude and thanks to their generosity of these caring professionals who again volunteered their time. Thank you truly for all that you have done. I now want to draw your attention to some of our Phase 3 guidance and directions, which have been recently created and posted to the government website at coronavirus.gov.bm. In particular, I'd like to go over some of the points from the directions for gyms, exercise facilities, health clubs, and dance studios. And this is namely the information for the patrons that are visiting those facilities. As a patron, specific instructions should be given to you before you even enter the facility so that you are aware of the expectations and requirements. It is highly likely that you will have to pre-book visits and that these will be time limited. You may be asked to sign a declaration saying that you have read and understood their obligations. You should be screened for illness prior to entry. This may include temperature checks or questions about your health. It should be noted that even with physical distancing, during exercise, droplets containing COVID-19 may travel longer distances, and a gym workout is a high-risk activity. Therefore, all patrons must ensure that they maintain 6 feet distance between themselves. Masks should not be worn during gym activities of high exertion. However, for lower intensity activities, patrons may wear a mask as long as it can be tolerated. If a patron is struggling to breathe, feeling faint or dizzy, or experiencing chest pain or other discomfort, they should remove the mask. As a reminder, again, children younger than the age of 2 must not wear masks at all. Gym patrons must always wash their hand with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer on entering the building at regular intervals and after using equipment. If it is necessary to cough or sneeze, you should do this into a clean tissue which is safely discarded or in the crease of your elbow. Please note that personal towels should not be used to wipe equipment. Single-use paper towels or wipes should be provided to you by the gym, which can then be properly disposed. There will be limitations of group classes. Group exercise classes should be conducted outdoors, limited, or canceled to the greatest extent possible. In the event group exercise classes are held, such classes may only take place if they can be completed in accordance with the following: more than 6 feet of distance maintained between participants at all times, no shared equipment during class unless sanitized between users, and sufficiently adjusted class schedules to allow for deep cleaning between classes. Martial arts or other contact activities should be completed without any person-to-person contact. Limitations on group sizes should be adhered to, and the current maximum is 20 persons. Please do not arrive more than 10 minutes prior to class, and no close contact socializing with your fellow gym goers. Keep your mask on and 6 feet apart. Also, sweat-absorbing equipment such as yoga or exercise mats should not be communal. Customers should bring their own if required for their exercise. Water fountains and less hand-free bottle filling are not allowed, therefore patrons should bring pre-filled water or drink bottles. Gyms should consider closing off showers, locker rooms, and lockers, although access to restrooms should be provided. Clients should come to the facility in their gym or dance clothes and shower at home afterwards. If showers are used, they should be disinfected after each use. If towels are provided, they should be stored in covered, sanitized containers clearly marked clean and used, and hot temperatures should be used when laundering these items. And finally, gym staff should be encouraged to take the Infection Prevention and Control training, which is located on the government website. I would like to commend all those businesses that have had their employees complete the Infection Prevention Control training. More than 3,500 individuals have completed the training thus far from a wide cross-section of businesses. Infection prevention and control training is incredibly important. No matter where you work or which industry you work in, the risk of spreading infections in the workplace is ever present. It is important that everyone knows the risk, how to stay safe, and keep themselves and everyone around them healthy. This online training covers the fundamentals of infection prevention and control for COVID-19 and similar type diseases. It takes approximately 50 minutes, and it is all made available for employees as well as management. I would like to encourage those who have not yet done the training to do so by going to coronavirus.gov.bm and look under the heading Workplace Guidance link. As I close, I want to remind the public of the COVID-19 pop-up testing that's taking place around this island this weekend. Tomorrow at the Anglican Cathedral, the pop-up testing will take place from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. and again from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. and also tomorrow at Shelley Bay Marketplace from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. On Saturday, we will be at the Somerset Marketplace from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. and on Sunday, we will return to Shelley Bay Marketplace from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. In order to ensure that wait times at the pop-up testing venues are as minimal as possible, I strongly encourage you to make an appointment in advance. This will make it a lot faster and easier and much more convenient for you, and you won't have to wait in line. You can book online via the government website, coronavirus.gov.bm, or alternatively call our COVID-19 hotline at 444-2498 between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., and one of our very helpful telephone operators will be glad to assist you and make an appointment for you accordingly. All of our testing dates and the schedule for the pop-up testing, again, can be found at our website, the government website. And for more information about testing pop-ups, please again contact us at 444-2498. Thank you again, Bermuda. Please remember to wear your mask as well as exercise proper physical distancing, and as always, keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Health. Today, the substance of my remarks will be in reference to recent demonstrations and calls to embrace the CURB, or Citizens Uprooting Racism in Bermuda, racial justice platform, and to engage in groundbreaking legal reform to address the imbalances in our criminal justice system. To those who have been following the words and deeds of the government over the past few years, we have demonstrated in word and deed our commitment to establishing a measure of racial justice in our country. In fact, it was not so long ago that we were marching alongside so many of you and risking arrest or physical harm alongside many persons to make Bermuda a better and fairer place. There are some in Bermuda that needed to see the outpouring of anger over the murder of George Floyd by a policeman. There were some that needed to hear the pain in their black countrymen's voices as they told their stories. Stories of being denied, stories of being disrespected, and stories of being treated less than in their own country. The recent demonstrations helped to open many more eyes and revealed to many that sweeping changes is wanted and necessary for us to unite as one people. I am grateful to the organizers and promoters of the recent demonstrations in Bermuda and to CURB for the work they have done in many ways to make the objectives and agenda of this government not only more understandable, but also while we are working so hard and so long to make our vision for a better and fairer Bermuda a reality. In opposition, we understood that Bermuda, for all its wealth, all its success, and all the achievements made by some, far too many of us were being left out of the Bermuda success story. We understood that there were two Bermudas separated by opportunity, separated by outcomes, and separated by race. We were elected on a platform based around breaking down the two Bermudas and seeking to write more Bermudians into the Bermuda success story. As government, we have sought to take on the forces that keep wages low, prices high, and opportunities restricted. While we have had some success in this area, it is clear that tearing down hundreds of years of systemic racism, privilege, and selfishness will not be as fast as any of us desire. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without struggle. It never has, and it never will. My office has reviewed the CURB Racial Justice Platform previously, and I'm pleased to say that there are many points of agreement and many points that we have already implemented. I will review a few of those points. Support for a truth and reconciliation process. This was announced by Minister Levita Fogo and continues to be led by Minister Levita Fogo. And there is current consultation which is taking place online on forum.gov.bm. Guaranteed college scholarships. Since taking office, we have dramatically increased funding for scholarships and expanded access to scholarships for more Bermudians. Additionally, within our first 100 days, we ensured that no Bermudian was denied from accessing Bermuda College, whether that be for associate's degree programs, bachelor's degree programs, or further training programs due to a lack of finances, which is certainly required to address inequality in our economy. CURB also called for national health care. And listeners will recall that last year, Minister of Health Kim Wilson began a dialogue on reducing the cost of health care for Bermuda families. It is our intention to drive down the cost of health care, expand access to a wider range of healthcare options for Bermudians, and to create a fairer healthcare system for the better of all. Pensions and the inequality that exists. CURB had previously called for the elimination of the loophole where employers did not have to pay into the national pension scheme for their expatriate workers, which essentially made foreign workers cheaper than Bermudian workers. We supported this position, included it in our 2017 platform, and recently passed legislation to close that loophole. Public procurement policy. Early in our administration, we launched a new policy when it came to government contracts, with greater emphasis on expanding opportunity to people who have been denied opportunities in the past and making the playing field more level for Black, female, or persons with disabilities who own businesses. Furthermore, the BEDC was tasked with providing guidance to small and medium-sized business on the process for bidding for government contracts and have hosted a number of seminars for construction companies around this. And I can tell you from the cabinet contracts which have been awarded, we are certainly making progress in this area. Review of the criminal justice system. Everyone in Bermuda knows the statistics regarding incarceration in Bermuda. While Black Bermudians make up about 60% of the population, we comprise over 90% of the people in the country currently behind bars. And while over the years much has been done by successive administrations, starting with the alternative to incarceration agenda implemented under Premier Jennifer Smith, much work remains to address this continued imbalance. Last year, the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Kathleen Simmons, launched the Law Reform Commission and has selected MP Michael Scott to chair that particular commission, and we are waiting the approval of His Excellency the Governor to proceed. Living wage, another initiative advocated by CURB that has been advanced. Legislation was passed to establish in law a living wage in Bermuda, and the new Minister of Labor is looking to establish the actual living wage rate before the end of this year. Immigration reform. In 2017, we committed to comprehensive immigration reform and to creating a system that recognizes the small size of Bermuda, the history of immigration policies being weaponized, discrimination against Bermudians in the hiring, and the need for local and international business to be able to acquire the talent they may be unable to find in our workforce. The Bipartisan Immigration Committee was formed, and laws were changed for mixed-status families and, most significantly, for Bermudians born overseas to Bermudian parents. Workforce equity, another thing inside of CURB's racial justice platform. I am pleased to report that the Attorney General is reviewing legislation to enshrine the illegality of disparate treatment of different classes of workers in Bermuda. Legalization of cannabis. The government, in an initiative being spearheaded by the AG, the Attorney General, and Minister of Legal Affairs, is currently engaged in a consultative process surrounding the creation of a regulated cannabis market in Bermuda. Earlier in our term, we decriminalized cannabis possession under 7 grams in an effort to end the unnecessary criminalization of predominantly black Bermudian males and the devastating knock-on effect it has on so many. When it comes to future opportunities, the Attorney General is also developing a legislative agenda around the expunging of previous convictions for cannabis possession. Another thing called for was a memorial to Mary Prince. In 2019, Minister Levita Fogo, in her role as Minister for Labor, Community Affairs, and Sports, announced plans for a tribute to this iconic Bermudian trailblazer in the struggle against the enslavement of Africans, and has already identified a location for a statue in her honor. There was a call for the change to Emancipation and Mary Prince Day, or what was at that time Summer's Day. MP Chris Famous began to lobby the government in 2018 to decouple Bermuda's emancipation celebration from Sir George Summers. MP Famous reasoned that it was inappropriate for Bermuda to pair the anniversary of ending of slavery with the celebration of a colonizer. The government found merit in his arguments and changed Bermuda's laws to make Mary Prince Day a reality, and that will happen for the first time this year. This government believes that Black Lives Matter, and there is much work to be done to break down the two Bermudas to build a better and fairer Bermuda. But what is clear is that by our record, we have demonstrated that it did not take thousands of Bermudians marching in the streets for the matters at the forefront of Bermudian minds today to become priorities for the government. We recognize that talk is cheap, but actions speaks volumes. Today, I've outlined areas where we are in agreement with CURB and where we have either implemented aspects of their social justice platform and are making progress. Yet more remains to be done on the road to a better and fair Bermuda, and I am certain that Bermuda can change, and we are committed to changing Bermuda for the better. And I want to thank all of those who have either taken to the streets or used their voices, because I want to encourage you to continue to share your stories and speak about these issues, because it is the only way that Bermuda will put in the past our very painful racist history. And I want to thank all those who have been participating thus far. Tomorrow, in the House of Assembly, we will meet to consider 5 particular bills which will be advanced. The first will be the temporary suspension for 1 year of social insurance payments. The second will be the temporary suspension or 1-year suspension of payments into the the National Pension Scheme. The third will be amendments to the Public Health Act. These are amendments that will enable us to enact public health measures outside of the declaration of a state of emergency. There will be further amendments to the Bermuda Bar Act. These are things to make sure that we can have registered associates around the world, which will assist Bermuda in attracting more business to our shores. And finally, I'll be piloting through the Cost of Living Amendment Act through the House of Assembly. And this particular act seeks to allow the minister responsible for consumer affairs to mandate grocery stores to share pricing of certain goods electronically so those can be compiled and shared through technological means. I invite all persons to tune in to the House of Assembly, whether it be on the website parliament.bm, on the radio on 105.1, or on burnews.com. Before I end today's press conference, I want to say thank you to a few people. A few weeks ago, I challenged the Department of Communications to create COVID-19 messages and videos specifically for children. I am pleased to say that Al Seymour Jr., Program Manager at CITV, and his daughter Carrie Seymour took up the challenge. Al and Carrie Seymour worked together on the animated cartoon, which debuted at the start of today's press conference and which you will see again immediately afterwards. The female character Carly was voiced by 10-year-old Warwick Academy student Chloe Bassett. Al Seymour voiced the male character Uncle Kevin. The project was a combination of traditional hand-drawn animation and digital technology. 26-year-old Carrie is a graduate of Cedar Bridge Academy and Humber College in Toronto. She graduated Humber College in 2016 with a degree in applied arts and has returned to Bermuda after working for a short time in Canada. Carrie also specialized in digital editing and effects as well as graphic design. Mrs. Seymour is no stranger to animation and has worked on numerous cartoon projects for many years. The script was written by Communications Officer Helen Zollman. My appreciation goes to everyone who worked tirelessly on this outstanding production, as it's important while we go through this pandemic, we are also making sure that we message to our young people who are similarly suffering the effects of which this change in our way of life has caused. Thank you also to 9-year-old Kylie Hollis of West Pembroke Primary School, who sent in a letter and drawing paying tribute to her parents, who are essential workers. The Youth Library will display Kylie and other students' artwork in their public display board. I also extend thanks to all the workers, employers, and those on the front line of COVID-19. You have continued to serve our country well, and as more and more Bermudians return back to work, we are beginning to see that there can be hope in the midst of a global pandemic. I'm happy now to entertain any questions from members of the media today.
Good evening, Don Burgess, Bermuda Broadcasting. On the COVID-19 reopening indicators, PPE supplies are still listed on the government's website as being in the red zone. Is there any particular type of PPE that is needed more than any other, and how is this being remedied?
I think it's important to note that as you correctly said, we are in the red zone with respect to PPE, and that is related specifically to gowns. We obviously use quite a lot of gowns, and we have approximately 3 months supply of gowns. In order for us to transfer to the amber or to the green, we would require more than 3 months supply. You would note that there is a worldwide shortage on many supplies, such as gowns. However, we have just engaged local businesses to make reusable gowns. So we're expecting 500 gowns that will be reusable. It's helping to generate more money within the local economy as well. And those are being worked on as we speak.
Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Mr. Premier, earlier tonight you mentioned charter vessels will be allowed to have up to a certain capacity of their boat. This is a change from 12, so is that going to follow the 20% rule with social distancing?
Commercial boats, each boat has a maximum capacity on a boat, and so when a boat gets its official license, it has a maximum capacity on the boat. We're simply going to ask the persons, number one, to ensure that they are socially distant and that they adhere to the capacity on their boat. And so there is not the 20 limit, but if you have a boat and the capacity is 150 people, well, you have to look at what it will be to have people a specific feet apart on the boat and observe the rules of social distancing. And so the Coast Guard will be out on the water monitoring that to make sure that boats are respecting the laws of social distancing.
All right, thank you very much. How many businesses have been warned about breaking COVID-19 operational rules, such as restaurants not taking contact info, spas offering services prior to today that they shouldn't, or stores not following social distancing rules? And what's the most common infraction?
We've had the opportunity I have had the opportunity to, over the last day, to get the information from the bailiffs. As you know, the bailiffs were doing checking on businesses in Bermuda, as well as the Bermuda Police Service. And I just want to give you some statistics really quickly. And from the April 20th to June 1st, there were 2,160 checks. There were, and that's a total of 7 weeks. We have seen the common infractions were not wearing masks and social distancing. We have had the opportunity to give a number of warnings and to make sure a number of people have corrected those. There are about there are a total of 11 infractions that were handed out to businesses over the last 4 weeks.
Thank you very much. This week there will be several big Premier League football matches. The Liverpool-Everton game, for example, is expected to attract large number of viewers to local bars. Some people, Mr. Premier, might even want to watch West Ham. Do you have any specific advice for bars who are likely to see a surge in patrons waiting to watch the games on TV?
And who you're saying is playing, and I'm not going to make any predictions. The general rules still apply as it relates to exercising physical distancing, the wearing of masks, and continuing to utilize proper hand hygiene and the like. So whether or not it's a crowd of 20 watching a football match, or alternatively a crowd of 20 on a boat, one of the vessels that you just spoke about that Minister Keynes just addressed, at the end of the day, there is still a requirement that we exercise physical distancing as well as wearing a mask. So we're asking everyone to continue operating under those particular mitigants, because that's the only thing that's going to help us to continue on the path where we are from getting from this phase to another with reductions of COVID spread. So even if you're watching a football match, we're still encouraging you to operate with physical distancing and to wear the mask.
The people on the boats who have been asked to take their boat off the water because they're not following the rules. And I can tell you that the enforcement is taking place. I can also tell you that Bermudians are really adept to using their telephones. And when the people in our country see rules being broken at a restaurant, you can guarantee that the pictures are going into the Bermuda Police Service and coming into members on our team. And when the matters are dealt with, people are very reticent and asking for forgiveness. And so these are things that we are policing and in making sure the enforcement is taking place. We're just urging people to follow the rules to ensure that their afternoon or their weekend isn't spoiled when the enforcement elements take place.
Thank you.
And say I'm looking forward to watching West Ham on Saturday, though football is certainly eerily different when there are no fans in the stands. That much being said, I expect that all of the proprietors of the businesses of whom we have allowed to open will make sure that they are following the rules that are in place, because none of us want to allow either the Minister of National Security or the Minister of Health to force a particular place to close down because they're not following the rules. We must make sure that we are keeping responsible. We have seen many cases and instances of certain countries and jurisdictions who have not been as careful as we have in Bermuda and have seen cases go up, and that means that we will go backwards. We've done a really, really good job thus far, and that's why it's important that we continue with this really, really good job, because I think we're going to be able to tell a very good success story about Bermuda as we go forward.
Thank you. Mr. Premier, several countries are now struggling to contain second waves triggered by imported cases after believing they had the virus under control. Even New Zealand, a global leader, has mobilized its military after new cases slipped through its tight controls. You said before that the elimination is not a goal. The tourism minister has described safety measures that will be put in place, and the health minister has conceded the reopening of borders might bring in new cases. What can you say to reassure Bermudians that you'll keep them safe?
I will put it this way, that I have no intention of exposing my family, or any of the persons in this country of whom I serve to risks which are not necessary. What I'm going to say is that we must strike a balance between our economic health and our public health. And I think that that balance is being struck. We will have, upon putting into place what has been laid out right now, probably the strictest entry requirements of any particular country that is traveling. When we're talking about pre-testing, which is important to make sure that persons are not inadvertently getting on a plane, infecting other persons while either on the plane or when they land, testing upon arrival, and then a regular schedule of testing when persons are here, recognizing the particular incubation period of this virus. So I think when we lay out all of those particular items, we will do a very good job of keeping persons safe. I think that we have demonstrated how we've managed to be able to control imported cases previously. I think that we've done a pretty good job of that, and now we're going to build on this. But I think that we need to approach this from a different perspective. And the perspective which we need to approach this is, how are we going to live with the coronavirus, and which will be with us for some time in the future. And that's why we talk about our new normal. But I am not willing to sacrifice an entire tourist industry to say no. I'm saying that we can do it well, and we will continue to do it well. There's good news that has come out with certain hotels that are going to indicate that they'll be opening back up. The Minister of Tourism, in conjunction with Bermuda Tourism Authority, continues to work on making sure that we have the demand for tourists when they come in. And the Minister of Health and the Minister of National Security will work hand in hand, as they have done for the past 3 to 4 months, in ensuring that our country remains safe. So I am confident that we will get it right. I am confident that we will strike that balance. There may be some mistakes, there may be some errors, but I think on the whole, we will get it right, and we're determined to make a success of it. We must reopen our borders. We have the capacity to do it safely. We have a number of different testing options and modalities at our disposal, whether it be through our government lab, whether it be through the new tests which are coming to the island. We are making sure that we're able to do this well. And we expect for Bermuda to be a leader in this space. So the words of comfort that I can give to the citizens of this country is that we have thought this through. We are continuing to refine it, and Bermuda will be a safe place for our residents, but will also be a safe place for our visitors.
Thank you very much. My last question tonight. Some people are waiting on checks from overseas that have to be mailed rather than direct deposited. Is it possible to get the overseas mail in via cargo flights or cargo ships?
That's a very good question. As you know, our mail is not coming in as regularly as we want, and will not resume until regular commercial flights are rescheduled. In the main, we are looking at alternate ways of getting mail to Bermuda. We have some mail coming from the Royal Mail in the United Kingdom that will come to Bermuda by container ship. We have a freight company that is making once a week, assisting the post office taking letters and parcels and registered letters off island and document mail off island once a week. We have cargo jets that will be taking mail off island as well. And so these are contingency plans that the postmistress has put in place, and we understand and we accept that there are a number of people that rely on the mail for business and for personal elements of business and such. We have a plan in place that sees us using alternate means, cargo jets, using our freight companies assisting with the mail, and these are parts of the contingency plan that the postmistress has in place. But the ultimate aim is to get the flights back running so we can have regularized mail again.
Just to follow up, you mentioned the mail going out on the cargo ships but not coming in.
Nope. There is in the main a cargo ship. Obviously, for the mail to go out on a cargo ship, Don, it would have to come in on a cargo ship, and so we're going to look at getting mail in by that means as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Sarah Lagan from the Royal Gazette. A question about schools, and it might be for the Premier. I'm not sure if the Health Minister might have a hand in it as well, but how confident is the government that social distancing can be maintained in the schools when they come back in the new academic year?
How confident are we? I would say that we have to be confident that we're going to be able to live by the rules of which we set out. And so from that particular perspective, I'm saying there may not be 100%, but we strive for 100%. But the alternative is not having our children return back to school, which I don't believe is acceptable. I think that you will see of the harm which is caused for children's mental health and or educational development. Though we've done a lot of remote instruction and though it's worked very well, I think that we are looking forward to students returning back to school buildings, and I'm sure that we'll be able to handle it well, and the Minister of Education, in conjunction with the Minister of Health, will work through what's necessary in order to make it a reality.
Premier, if I can interject there. I was invited by the head of school at BHS to look at their IB program and what they're doing there. It was one of the only opportunities that I had to see for the DERM and to see how we're progressing. And I could see that this is a new normal for us, but I could also see that the school's planning team had put a lot of work in place to work with the physical distancing in the schools. I can see where the students were working differently. I was there when they were actually in session, and I can tell you that it is our new normal, but it can be done. And I'm sure that, and I speak with the Minister of Education on a regular basis. He is on the parliamentary, on the ministerial subcommittee that's dealing with this matter, and he has the opportunity, and this is in the forefront of his mind, and his team are working on a plan that we believe can be executed in the fall.
Okay, thank you. Minister of Health, you mentioned there about reusable gowns that you're looking into. Do you have any information that you might have about reusable masks? What's the status on that?
Actually, the reusable gowns is something that we were looking at simply because that is the particular PPE, item of PPE that is putting us still at the, we can't go up to the amber or to the green on our reopening indicators, which is obviously important until we have the right amount of PPE. And the only amount of PPE that we really don't have sufficient supply for is the gowns. We've ordered them locally, as well as ordered 500 reusable ones. With respect to masks, there are some types of masks that are, and we've spoken about it here, that we're encouraging persons to use, which is like the cloth masks that are being made by a number of persons within our community. We've also indicated that when it comes to the N95s, which are a more higher level mask, because there's a worldwide shortage of them, and we do have supplies here in Bermuda, we want to make sure that persons that are using those are within the medical and surgical field, as opposed to persons walking around the streets with an N95. So the reusable masks, which we have a cottage industry that's making these fast and furious, are being encouraged. You wash them, you continue to use them. It's probably less trash within our landfills as well, so it's more environmentally friendly, as well as the reminder for persons that the N95s are only for persons within the medical field and not for everybody to wear, walking through the streets.
Okay. The World Health Organization recently welcomed the preliminary results of dexamethasone in treating the critically ill. That was just a few days ago. Has that changed the government's position on how much of that we get in and how much we use on the island?
We had a meeting actually today that there's a committee that is made up of scientists and medical doctors that advises the Premier, and we meet quite regularly. In fact, this was one of the items that was discussed today. It is still being explored. In fact, one of the doctors that spoke about it had recently read an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and it was speaking about some of the benefits, but it is still in early days now, so whether or not and to what extent it'll be utilized here in Bermuda is still in the exploration stages.
Okay. Can you share anything, Minister of National Security, on the cost base of the Royal Bermuda Regiment embodiment throughout this pandemic?
That will be discussed at the appropriate time. I told one of your colleagues that those numbers will be discussed with Cabinet. We're in the process of doing that, and I will bring a ministerial statement in the House where I will share it with with my parliamentary colleagues first before it is disseminated in the public.
Okay. Do I have there was advice about under 2-year-olds can't wear masks. Is there any advice that you can give to help them out? Or because they can still transmit, presumably. They can still infect, sorry. So while they might not show symptoms, it's still a risk to others.
Yes,
Is there
I
any
think-
advice you're giving out on
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the fact that they're unable to wear masks is one thing, and I understand that you obviously have an issue about that, and that's great because clearly under 2 is not being recommended by World Health Organization or CDC. However, as best as possible with an infant or a toddler, to try to encourage social distancing. And if you have to have close contact with persons, it should be minimized. It should be your close family and your circles. Remember, we've been talking about these social bubbles, so that might be your immediate family and perhaps another family. We're just trying to ensure that everybody is safe, and we have to measure the risk. And obviously, a child, like you say, that's not wearing a mask may be exposed. However, the best way to try to minimize that risk and minimize that exposure is through the physical distancing, as best as you can with a toddler.
Hey everyone, Maya Placier here for Media Maya. My first question is, when can Bermudian citizens who are overseas, primarily in the UK, expect to have a full address regarding procedures on re-entering the island?
A forward address?
Like from you, like the panel, telling them exactly what the steps as to what they need to do to come back to the island.
Okay.
I think for the most part, Ms. Blasio, that those things have been laid out. It's a question of the availability of flights. And so I think that British Airways is looking to have their first flight, I think it's July 17th, I think is the schedule. And if those persons are looking to return, they may, but the requirements will be, as is specified right now, for returning residents being tested on arrival, and if they do not wish to be tested on arrival or keep a regular regime, they can just stay in quarantine for 14 days and go forward. But those particular things, I think the Minister of Tourism laid out the week before last, I think it was, or last week Thursday, laid out our plan for reopening as we approach phase 4. There is still some fine-tuning of the particular guidance which is taking place, but the overall perspective is as I just gave. Returning residents will be required to test upon arrival and will be subject to a regular testing regime. And all persons, if they do not want to be subject to a regular testing regime, can go ahead and quarantine for 14 days if they wish. And that will be the same rules for all persons in the country.
Thank you. Just to clarify, because the last press conference, does that mean that Bermudian citizens do not have to have a negative result 72 hours before boarding the flight?
Returning residents, that is correct.
Awesome. Thank you very much. My next question comes from a university student again. U.S. immigration or the consulate, is it open for students to receive their U.S. visas?
I am not entirely certain, but I'm sure that they are still conducting their services. I don't know whether they have in-person services or not, but I'm certain that they would be conducting those services as they are continuing to work remotely, as I understand. I know that there's a number of matters of which they process, so I would just assume that they are continuing to provide services, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question comes from the community. Is driver's ed at TCD available and not open?
Ooh. I don't think
So
it's
when you say driver's ed, that's an Americanism. In Bermuda, we have Project Ride, and Project Ride is something that is done during the school year, and it is put on by the Transport Control Department. Obviously, many things were put on hold during the pandemic. That is something that we'll have to follow up on.
Okay. Yes. And
But if a person wants to learn how to drive generally, those persons go to a private enterprise that actually teach people how to drive.
Thank you very much. And also, what are the guidelines on jet skis? Can more than one person be on it at once?
I think in order to successfully be socially distant, it is not practicable for two jet people to be on a jet ski at one time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is, when will the grocery shopping day will be lifted?
We have the opportunity as the ministerial subcommittee to discuss this. This is something that we will discuss, and at the appropriate time, we will let the public know what the decision and the time is.
Thank you very much.
It's in phase 3B, Ms. Palacio. But what I can say, in an answer to a previous question, is government employees are constantly working and sending us answers at all times. From an employee at the Transport Control Department, the answer is yes regarding driving exams, and they have started driving exams again.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank everyone for their particular attention this evening. On Monday and Thursday, we'll be back here again next week. By next week, Thursday, we will lay out what the move to phase 4, which is still targeted to happen on July 1st, and we will be outlining all of the particular requirements that will happen on the move to phase 4. On Monday, it is my expectation that the Minister of Tourism and Transport will be here to give a full brief on the progress towards the reopening of our borders and what we're looking for and the finalization of the processes which are going to be laid out for visitor entry into the country. So I wish all of the persons that are watching and all of Bermuda a very good night. So thank you, and good night, Bermuda.
Hi, Carly.
Oh, hey, Uncle Kevin.
What are you doing?
Building a fort to protect myself.
From what?
Coronavirus. Mom says it can get inside you and make you sick.
Well, it can, but you want me to tell you the best ways to fight a supervillain like the coronavirus?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go. Okay, well, first of all, you have to know your enemy in order to defeat him, right? You'll have to know his strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
So what is the coronavirus, and what are his supervillain powers?
Being invisible?
Good guess, Carly. So small, in fact, that you need a special microscope just to see him.
What does he look like?
Well, he's round and has little antennas that stick out of him, kind of like the sticky burrs that get caught in Max's fur, except he attaches himself to people. Coronavirus travels into your body through your nose, mouth, and eyes, and then makes lots of copies of himself while he's in there, making a whole coronavirus army, which could make you sick.
My friend Lucy had coronavirus inside of her, and she didn't feel sick.
Well, some people just get a little sick, like children, or not sick at all. But it can make older people like Grandma and Grandpa really sick. And even if we don't get sick, we can still carry around the coronavirus, which can jump from us to other people or things.
What things?
Well, if someone sneezes or coughs, the virus travels through the air in droplets that can stick to things, like door handles. If you touch the door handle and then put your hand near your mouth, nose, or eyes, the virus can get inside you.
How can we stop it?
Well, first of all, by not being with large groups of people. With less people around us for the virus to jump to, he eventually goes away.
Is that why Lucy couldn't have a big birthday party last week?
Exactly. That's also why school was closed.
So how can I protect myself, Uncle Kevin? I don't want the coronavirus to jump to me.
Secret weapon number 1. Wash your hands.
Wash my hands? That doesn't sound like a secret weapon, Uncle Kevin.
It is. The coronavirus sticks to your hands, but when you wash them really well with soap and water, it unsticks the virus. But you have to do it for at least 20 seconds, which is the same amount of time it takes to sing the ABC song.
So what else?
When you sneeze or cough, do it into your elbow, like this. Also, if you aren't feeling well, stay at home and don't play with or hug anyone who feels sick. And lastly, what superhero doesn't wear a mask?
Thanks, Uncle Kevin.
You have to wear it properly, though, okay? It has to cover your nose and your mouth, and you wear it whenever you leave the house.
Right.
Shall we finish building this fort then?
Sure, but could you wash your hands first, Uncle Kevin?
Absolutely, Carly.
back to blacks in the media. Despite all the things that people write about and what conversation has gone to, I understand the reporting aspect of it, right? But those people who were the trailblazers in this industry, if 400 people came to my office that I hired, and as an